Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this latest meeting of the National Jewish Assembly. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Gary Mond. I'm the chairman of the NJA, and we're very honoured tonight to have, speaking to us from Israel in a kibbutz near the northern border, Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror. I'm going to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Dror, and then I'm going to ask him to speak to us. So, Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror spent 24 years in service in the IDF. He held key positions in coordination and liaison units, including as head of the operational branch in the COGAT entity, that's the Coordination of Government Activities in the Territories. From 2016 to 2018, he established and commanded the Good Neighbour Directorate, which is an operational unit in the Northern Command that managed the largest humanitarian aid mission ever conducted by the IDF. It carried out approximately 700 humanitarian aid missions alone along the Israel-Syria border, which is an area that at that time was controlled by terrorist organizations such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and of course Hezbollah. The Directorate's activities provided significant assistance to Syrian civilians who were affected by the civil war and fostered a unique trust-building relationship in a highly complex reality. Today, Lieutenant Colonel Dror continues to contribute as an active IDF reserve officer in the Golan Heights Division and as an international lecturer in 3 languages, English, Arabic, and Hebrew. In his lectures, he shares his experiences on various topics, including geopolitics, humanitarian aid, collaboration, implementation of complex processes, creative thinking, trust building, and particularly interestingly at the moment, the Shiite axis. It gives me great pleasure to invite Eyal to speak to us. Eyal, over to you.
So good evening and thank you very much, Gary. And thank you very much, NJA, for having me for this talk. I'm really excited. And when Dalia and me were planning this event, we said it will be because I released a book that I think people should read, and I said that I want to share it. However, like you know, something happened last Friday, something so important, so historic in the Middle East, so I asked the permission to have like a couple of minutes talk and to share my thoughts about that. So I will talk a little bit about Iran, then we will focus on Operation Good Neighbor and the book Embracing the Enemy, and of course we will have plenty of time for your questions. So literally, I believe as a person that in the last 30 years were dedicated his life for exploring and fighting for its country against the Shiite axis, against the enemies of Israel. I think that this is historic days. For 40 years, the head of the snake, like you call it, Iran, were built its power, its proxies around Israel. His vision was very simple. We are going to create a nuclear bomb in order that our regime will be able to survive. Nobody will mess up with us if we will have a nuclear bomb. It will be a threat on Israel, and our mission is to destroy the state of Israel. However, our mission is also to threat the other parts of the Islam, the Sunnis, and the Western world. And if we will have this nuclear bomb, we can do that, and nobody will dare to fight against us. However, in order that the world will not prevent it from us, we will sponsor what we call the Shiite proxies. Hezbollah, probably you heard, Houthis, Shiite militias from Iraq and Syria, and even Hamas and Islamic Jihad, who are Sunnis. However, they have some mutual interest in destroying the state of Israel. October 7th, unfortunately, happened. And since then, for the last 20 months, we are in a huge fight for our future, for our children's future. For us, the people of the North, for example, who were evacuated from our homes for 16 months, I was over than 450 days at a reserve with my unit. So we fought against Hamas, and we will win. We fought against Hezbollah and we defeat it. We fought against the Shiite militias, we defeat them. And now, since the last Friday, we are fighting against the head of the snake, the Iranian regime. Israel did a strategic surprise to this regime, something that will be learned for years in the military academic all over the world. And Israel succeeded to hit them strongly, to destroy the chain of command. For me as a military person, it's maybe the more important thing. When you are a soldier and you don't have commanders, you have problems. And this is what Israel did. We eliminated most of the most important roles on the ICGRC. And in addition, of course, we hit their nuclear infrastructure. It's important to understand that it is not just to hit the factories. It's eliminated the engineers that working there and to target the archive with all the information. It means that Iran, it doesn't matter how the war will end, Iran went back a lot of steps in the vision to create a nuclear. A second goal was to destroy their abilities to create missiles. I'm sure that you are seeing news. Today we had a very strong hit on Soroka Hospital, talking about war crimes. However, we had several of them on Haifa, on Ramat Gan, on Rishon LeZion. Buildings has been destroyed from one missile. Can you imagine what will happen if they will have 10,000 missiles? So the second goal was to destroy their abilities to create missiles, and according to the IDF spokesman, Israel made a huge way on that. Whether the Iranian regime will be changed, this wasn't the goal of this war. It might happen. However, this wasn't for the first a goal. I hope and pray that this will be the end of this game. The Iranian regime is a threat for the Middle East, for the stability of the Middle East, for the stability of the world. So I hope, and earlier we spoke with Mr. Gary and Stephen about the latest announcement of President Trump, said I will take 2 weeks to get a decision. I don't think it will take 2 weeks. It's maybe a part of his psychological warfare in order to bring Iranian to the totally surrender, like he said, or just to cheat them whether they will be a part of this party, the Americans, and will attack. Of course, if the Americans will attack, it can be much more quicker way. However, even without them, I do believe that the IDF create the damage and continue to do that until the Iranian will not have problem. And just remember, when the Iranian regime will understand and realize that they are going to be eliminated, not the nuclear, they are going to be eliminated, then there will be surrender. Why? Because in their strategy, the most important thing for them is to survive. They can wait another 50 or 70 years until they will create the nuclear bomb. Again, people should understand and realize the meaning of the radical Shiite. So they can wait for that. However, if they will not survive, they will not be able to create it. So I do believe that we are in historic time. I do believe that Israel caused a damage, and I do believe that the Middle East is going to be changed. Even if this regime will be, I think, and we heard it from the Chancellor of Germany, even from the G7 leaders, they are finally started to say, we understand that Iran is bad, we understand that Iran is causing problems. They are less afraid. Why? Because the Iranian regime that for 40 years made a psychological warfare and threatened the free world, the world finally realized that Iran is not such a big threat. And I think that this is one of the most important consequences of the strategic surprise and the strategic attack of Israel. So I do see some place to be optimistic regarding the Middle East, although the fact that we are, as Israelis, we are almost 2 years in the war. Our children For my children, they stopped school for the 6 times in the last 2 years. They have plenty of challenges. I hope that when you will arrive Israel, we will be able to share and to talk much more about that. So this is a little bit about the Iranian. Of course, if you will have questions, we will do it later. With your permission, let's go to the main event. I want to talk a little bit about something else, something that probably you never heard in the Middle East, because when there is good things, probably BBC will not share it. So with your permission, I will share the presentation. I just want to see, Steve, can you see the presentation?
Yes,
I can see it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And
I can see it too.
let's see if it goes to the next slide. Can you see the slide in Arabic?
Yes.
Great. So let's start. Is anyone knows to read Arabic? I mean,
You're
in
all
the
mute,
UK,
so.
people, most of them do not learn Arabic unless you are Muslim. So what is written here? السلام عليكم بإذن الله بكرة تلين على إدلب كل الشكر والتقدير والاحترام لكم جميعا أتمنى لكم مزيدا من التقادم والازدهار دامتم ودام دولة القانون لن ننساكم أبدا. We will never forget you. And this message that I got from a colleague, the guy with the black shirt, a Syrian doctor, I got it in July 2018, a day before this guy had to escape for his life. I realized that the Israeli biggest humanitarian operation in the history, one of the biggest humanitarian operation that any army conducted in the history, came to its end, and this is Operation Good Neighbor. This will be the talk of today. So like Mr. Gary said, my name is Eyal. I'm living in Dafna, a beautiful community on the northern border, 1.5 km from the Lebanese border, but the most beautiful place in Israel for sure. I served 24 years as an active duty officer. In the last 6 years, I'm serving. Basically, today, now, it's the first time, I think, after 30 years that something going on in Israel, and I'm not with my unit. It means a lot about the Syrian border. I'm writing a PhD in the University of Haifa. I recently released my book, Embracing the Enemy. It tells the story of Operation Good Neighbor. And like I said, I think that people in the world should know about it. This was my decision to translate it to English. It was written in Hebrew 2 years ago, and then it took me 2 years to translate it to English. And in most of the days, I'm a speaker. I'm talking to groups and share some of my knowledge. And I will have the privilege to meet you when you will be coming to Israel in another couple of months. Talking about Operation Good Neighbor, well, with one slide, I will call it making the impossible possible. And I use this slide to prove it, because in this slide, it's written in Arabic, Shukran Israel al-Musada wal-Hub. Thank you, Israel, for the help and love. Making the impossible possible. 15 years ago, nobody thought that it can be possible that a Syrian child will be treated in Israel, his life will be saved, and when he will go back home, he will say, thank you, Israel. However, it happened. It happened thanks to Operation Good Neighbor. Operation Good Neighbor were based, or the thought about it were, when we saw what happening in Syria, the terrible Syrian civil war, plenty of war crimes, genocide, real genocide, 1 million people who lost their lives, 6 million refugees in a country that has totally destroyed. This was in Syria. However, it changed also our border. The border, the Israeli-Syrian border, was very quiet since the end of the 73 war. For 40 years, until 2011, the quietest border that we have. More quiet even than the Egyptian and the Jordanian. When I'm speaking about quiet border, it's from military point of view, not a single terror attack coming out from that border. However, it changed. It changed because when the Syrian civil war started, we found on the border very good friends of us. They were under the name Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And you can understand that their mission was to kill Israelis. This is what their statements were. They were a part of the rebels, people who were fighting against the regime. However, When people like these are sitting next to the border, it's something very concerning. Just think about a Jewish mom living in the southern part of the Golan Heights in Ramat Magshimim or Novo Chispin, and she is opening the window of her house, and she sees that less than 2 kilometers from her house, there is presence of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. On the other side, people in Syria were sitting and living in terrible conditions. You can see those pictures. It's from inside Syria. I got it. I will not, of course, tell you how I got it because it's a military secret, but those are their lives in tents. And take a look how a hospital or emergency room in a hospital looks like. Now, Israel realized that, yes, we have a security challenge. However, on the other side, 250,000 human beings dying, suffering. And Israel in 2013 decided to open its border and evacuated to our country Syrians who needed a life-saving treatment. 3,500 of them entered Israel, and their life has been saved during 3 years. And in 2016, Israel decided to create a unique operation under the name Operation Good Neighbor. My role as the commander of this operation, first of all, was to build a unit. You will read it in the book. The meaning of creating a startup from A to Z. And then to face against reality, failures, misunderstanding the Syrian culture, and to build a mechanism of work against among people who used to be our enemies. So in 2016, we established that unit. And like I said before, my mission was one, to think 24/7 about people living in an enemy country and to save their lives. I want to take you to the border with me and share some of our projects. This one, always in the night, of course, from security reason. Its goal was to meet children, Syrian children, 25 of them every week with their moms. Now, don't be mistaken by how pastoralic this picture looks like. It is not. When you are going down the fence, and you can see on the left, you can see the fence. This is the border between Israel and Syria. When you know that your enemy, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, is watching you, it's everything except you can be relaxed. A huge tension, you know that your life is under severe danger, and you decide to open it to save people. For us, and I think that you know that as Jews, there is a sentence that the person that saves a person's life is like saving the whole world. I can't count how many times my soldiers saved the world, if so. So we entered those children who are suffering from chronic diseases like eye problems, ear problems. It's not risk to their lives. However, the life will be better if they will meet expert doctors. And take a look about the children. When you see the children, you are not thinking about yourself as a lieutenant colonel. You are thinking about yourself as a father of 3 children. My oldest one was 6 years old when I was the commander of this operation. And as a parent, there is nothing more scary or nothing more break heart to hear a child when it's very rainy and he's entering with his leg barefoot because he doesn't have shoes, and to see his tears. It can break your heart. So we had a privilege. Yes, it was a security mission. We realized that we can build bridges of trust with them. We realized that if they will respect us and they will realize that we are not what they were educated to hate us, this was the Syrian education system, that Israel is the enemy. It might be more secure, this border. However, when you met them, you realize that we are simply doing the right thing to do as human beings. So they was being treated on the Israeli hospitals. However, when you see this picture, it's exactly what I said before. We did good. We did good for humanity. It goes with our Jewish values. And there is nothing that we felt more proud than to see children smiling. 1,400 of them were smiling. Just think how many of them become later on ambassadors of the State of Israel. Now, the operation, we did collaboration with colleagues, with Christian organization. This is an example of this kind of collaboration, a field clinic that was built by an American team, a Christian organization, Friendships Unlimited. Those are the same people that working today in Syria and helping today the population of Syria under the IDF. So doctors were treated Syrian civilians. The Syrians said that for them it was like a couple of hours, that they shouldn't have been thinking whether they will be murdered, raped, or bombed. And it's huge. What is even more huge in what the Americans did is not just the treatment, it's the treatment for the soul. Take a look at this beautiful playground. It was inside the camp, and you can see on the left I wrote one word, because this is the word that my grandma and grandpa used to say to answer me when I asked them how you survived the Holocaust. They said we had hope. The Syrians got hope from Israel, and I do believe that it was important. Hope, by the way, is a girl that eating ice cream for the first time in her life, or a boy that hugging a teddy bear. The operation continues, and with a Muslim organization, we help the Syrians to build, for example, a maternity hospital. Take a look how it looks like. There is 1,000 babies that were born in this maternity hospital. It was like a mile inside Syria. We provided this equipment, approximately $5 million project. And after a year, we continue and we increase dramatically the humanitarian aid, providing them clothes and food. And talking about the clothes, just think, you're coming from the UK. UK is a cold country. The Golan Heights is sometimes even colder. Zero is below, the temperature is below zero. It's freezing, snow. People who is living in the snow in a tent, a dry coat is a lifesaver. We provide over the 350 tons of coats for the Syrians, and like you see, food. And this operation lasted for 2.5 years, 700 humanitarian missions, 700 times. We chose to risk our lives in order to provide aid and in order to save other people. And unfortunately, because of geopolitical circumstances, the involvement of Russia in the Middle East, helping the Assad regime to survive, the Hezbollah. So in 2018, the Syrian regime succeeded to conquer the Golan Heights. However, we did one more last operation. And one day, I hope that Syrians will speak about that. We saved the life of over than 400 people of the white helmets. Those people were brave people, Syrian civilians, who were literally jumping into the fire to save their own people. However, unfortunately for them, they exposed to the war that the Assad regime is using chemical weapon. And they were condemned to death in any place that the regime were conquered. In our last days of this operation, we succeeded to open the border and to save over than 400 of them, evacuate them from Israel to Jordan. They got new identities, new life, and they survived. They are living today thanks to the State of Israel. Today, in Ashara government, the current president of Syria, the minister that is in charge on making Syria ready for earthquakes and other disasters, he was the commander of the White Helmets. So a minister in the Syrian regime now knows that Israel saved his own people. Just think about that when we will talk later on about possibilities for the future with Syria. This is how it looks like on the night. It was one of the most important and amazing and exciting nights that I had. And the operation came to its end. And people ask me whether it was worth it. So I will use again one slide. And I remind you what I said before, making the impossible possible. Take a look at the flag of my country, the flag of Israel, the flag that I dedicated 30 years from my life to protect the country. And take a look what is written out on the top of the flag. On the left, the short one is Wiham. Wiham is an Arabic name of a girl. She was 9 years old. She was saved by the Israeli doctors after suffering from severe diabetes. And when she had the chance to be released back to Syria, she drew the flag. She wrote her name. She mentioned the love sign. And on the right, she wrote two words, Abu Yaqub. The father of Jacob. Abu Yaqub was my Syrian name. So just think about that. A Syrian girl, a Muslim, dedicating the flag of Israel to an IDF officer that saved her life. We will not forget Israel, nevertheless, a lot of other Syrians. Now, during the last 6 years, when the Assad regime were controlling, I was traveling around the world, and from time to time I met Syrians. In one of the occasions, I met one in Toronto. I was planning to have a talk in a Jewish synagogue, and suddenly a person reached to me and started to shout to me in Arabic. And I realized the name. He called me Abu Yaqub, so I knew that he's a person that connected to Syria, because they are the only people that called me Abu Yaqub. And then he said, I'm a refugee in Canada. Later on, he got his citizenship. And he said, when I realized that you're coming to Israel, when you're coming, for Toronto to speak, I said that I must meet you and thank you for what you have done for my country. And so just imagine the scenario. An IDF reservist officer is standing in the middle of a Jewish synagogue in Toronto, talking to the Jewish community. And in between them, a Muslim person is sitting and listening. And when I finished, he raised up his hand. And he was talking to the Jewish community of Toronto. And he told them, you know what? If my army, the Syrian army, was just 10% humanitarian, like your army, like Eyal, some of my relatives, some of my friends probably were still alive. This is why I claim that they didn't forget us, and we saw some examples during the last month. The last month in Syria was very historic also. By the way, the Syrian regime will tell you that the reason why Ashara or Ajolani made his move was because the defeat that Israel made to Hezbollah. Hezbollah has a big presence in Syria. While we were fighting in Lebanon, they evacuated the people from Syria to Lebanon. And then the ceasefire agreement has been signed. This gave the Ajolani the sign that he can attack the weak Syrian army. So he admit that this historic move happened thanks to the state of Israel. And the revolution happened in 11 days. I love to use the cartoons in order to explain my words. Take a look on the right. You can see on the chess game that Turkey became more powerful than Russia and Iran. However, take a look in the hand of the Turkish. It's written in Arabic, Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, which means that we all have to remember what are the roots of the current regime. And you can see it here. He presents himself now as a moderate. He's talking very nicely. He's wearing, $2,000 suits with ties. I'm not forgetting that he is the president that established Al-Qaeda. I'm not forgetting that his people around him are belonging to very radical streams. They are part of ISIS, etc. I will not confuse you with the names that combined what he called this organization, Hayat Tahrir Sham. However, I do believe that there is plenty of opportunities, not because he became a Zionist. I'm not closing my eyes. I know, believe me, I know the meaning of Hudna. It means let's make an agreement until I will be strong enough to hit you. However, because he is now weak, because he doesn't have any army, I think that we have a possibility to create some opportunities. And if we will succeed, to take him out from the Sunni radical stream represented by Turkey and Qatar and go to the more moderate one represented by Saudi Arabia and the UAE, there can be some seriously a new era in the Middle East. And if you will ask me, so is it good or bad to Israel? I will tell you, of course. On the strategic level, it's good for Israel. Why? Because Assad or Syria had an important role on what we call the Shiite axis. Syria was in the middle between Iran and Lebanon. Most of the ammunition, the experts, the money to Hezbollah was moved by the Iranian to Syria and then on the borders between Syria and Lebanon. The falling of this regime, the Assad regime, and now that they have a Sunni president who hates Iran even more than what we do not respect Iran, because like I told you, it's a conflict between Sunnis and Shiite. There were even some news that Ashara sent his soldiers to the border with Iraq in the last days to prevent from the Shiite militias to enter Syria to fight against Israel. So for us, of course, it's a very important thing that happened. I remind you, Iran is the only country that swore to destroy the state of Israel, and Syria was a part of that plan. On the other hand, like I said, there are plenty of radicals, people around him. It can be a threat. If I want to try to conclude the situation in Syria, the impact of Operation Good Neighbor, first of all, can open the bridge for talks because we saved Sunnis people and Ashara and his people are Sunnis. They know that we saved their own people. Second, he is weak and he needs a lot of money and he needs international recognition and he needs technology. When you will be on Mount Bental, you will see that the path of the Israeli side that close to the border is totally green and the other side is totally yellow. They need the Israeli technology. They need the Israeli knowledge about agriculture. It can be, if you will close your eyes very strong and you will imagine, and to imagine is not to be naive. I'm not calling to be naive. I'm not calling to believe them. I'm calling to be aware, exactly like we are doing with Lebanon today. We are strong. We will hit any chance for anyone who is trying to aim us, not by talking like we did for the last 20 years, by actions like we are doing in the last 6 months in Lebanon. So, however, we can have some great opportunities. I do hope that we will not miss it. But again, it's a part of another conversation. So I think that I provide some knowledge. I do hope that you will choose to read the book. And the reason is because today, when the world is so anti-Israel and we are blamed as genocider, and it doesn't matter what you are trying to say, people will condemn Israel. I think that people should read and know that Israel were willing to risk her soldier's life in order to save others. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing now. You have my details on the left. You can picture it and be in touch with me. And I will stop sharing now. And Gary, it's for you. I will be more than happy to answer any question that you want.
Thank you. If you go to those who would like to ask questions, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there is a react button you will see. If you click on it and then you go to one from the bottom, it says raise hand. If you want to ask questions, please could you go to the react button and then click on raise hand. And I will call speakers, questioners as I see the hands go. I will ask the first question in the meanwhile. One of the matters that's come out of the last few days in the war between Israel and Iran is we see so many Western journalists suggesting that we're on the verge of World War III, saying this is a cataclysm, a disaster of unimaginable proportions. The Middle East will go up in flames. Everything absolutely amazing. The extremities they're going to. Myself, I just don't see that happening. I don't see Russia getting involved. I don't see Russia getting involved. I don't see China getting involved. No one is coming to Iran's help, with the possible exception of the Houthis, and then only to a minor extent. I wondered what your thoughts were on this, of the extent to which this war will spread or not.
So I would say that you didn't hear the Russians speaking about that. You heard the Western journalists speaking about that.
Exactly.
And why? The West is still terrified from Iran after threatening them for 40 years. If you will touch us, hell will open. However, hell has been open in October 7th.
Exactly.
It opened. And Israel eliminated all the groups that should or could have opened this hell on Europe. Means that today you heard Hezbollah people saying Iran can deal with itself. Hezbollah do not want to interfere in that. So I do believe that it goes only about their thoughts and their fears. Yes, there is an opportunity that the Iranian regime will try to close the Gulf of Hormuz and to hit the economic situation of the world, the gas. This is a very important wave that's sending the petrol all over the world. However, also Iran is export there, so they will hurt themselves, and they do not want to hurt themselves. And if they will do so, the world will know that Iran is a problem, and the rest of the world, the countries will join parties. So I do not see that. I remind you that Russia involved in a very long war with Ukraine. They do not have the resources to fight to help Iran. And I remind you that Russia is in such a bad situation that they need from the Iranian military industry missiles and UAVs. So Russia will not help. They do not have enough power now to help that. China, well, I don't think that they are part of this game. China, in their strategic vision is the economic, which can lead them into economic interest. And I don't think that helping Iran is something that they will choose to do. So, in my opinion, and again, I'm not an expert to all of those countries. However, I do believe that the Iranian regime continue to threat, and the Western journalists continue to believe for them, although the Iranian expose how weak they are. Like I told you, there is a good sign when you heard finally you heard the leaders of the Western countries blaming Iran in everything. I hope that in a couple of days also the journalists will be rational and will understand that Iran is causing troubles and not Israel is the one. I do not see a scenario of a World War III. Iran, a lot of its weapon has been destroyed. Its commanders have been destroyed. You are not open a World War III if you are not powerful. Germany could have opened a World War II. They were very strong. Iran is not strong. We should understand that. We should believe that. They're only stronger than us in a psychological warfare. However, when you are entering a battle, it will not help.
Thank you, Eyal. Alex Friend, would you like to ask your question? And if possible, turn your camera on. Hi, Alex.
Hi. Do you think that Islam is at the root of the hostility towards Israel and Jews amongst its neighbors?
Gary, can you please repeat it?
Alex
Yes, I'll
asked,
repeat
do
it.
you think that Islam, the religion Islam, is at the root of the hostility towards Israel and Jews from its neighbors in the Middle East?
So you will not hear me talking about Islam, and you will not hear with me talking against Christian people. Anyone can believe in everyone he wants. I will talk about the radical leaders using Islam, both on the Shiite and the Sunnite. You can see Erdogan, which is a Sunnite, using the Islam. I do not think that most of the Muslims want to murder Israelis or Jews. So I do not think that the Islam is the problem. I think that the leaders, and during the history you can see that any leader that become a radical religious one, it became a problem. Here we are facing about the problem that for centuries the Muslims chose or were forced to have leaders that were using Islam against Israel. But the Islam, the religious of the Islam, yes, you can criticize the Islam. However, the Islam, and you can understand that the roots of the Islam claims against Israelis. By the way, you can claim that the Islam claim against other Islam roots, because Sunni will hate the Shiite. They are both Muslims. However, they are fighting against themselves. So if you will take a radical religious person, he will use and manipulate his religious in order to make the fatwas against the others. So the problem is the leader that using them, and the imams, the religious people that using the religious in order to convince the regular people that you need to hate the Jews or others.
Thank you, Eyal.
Thank you.
Justin Walker, your question.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Colonel. I'm a former British Army officer myself. My late father was a Royal Marine Commando officer, and he was moved as an emergency in the spring of 1948 to escort the end of the British Mandate from Jerusalem. And some of his men were out on patrol and came across basically a family of Palestinian man, woman, and 3 children who had been murdered by Zionist paramilitaries. Now, my father went to his grave saying that Israel was founded on terrorism, which got me interested, and I actually did some research, and you had the killing, the murder of Count Bernadotte, the UN peace mediator. I've since been working with Jewish people, and don't get me wrong, I totally condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th. It's disgusting, and I have no time for it whatsoever. I myself have witnessed terrorism, so, I know what we're up against. What I'm interested to know is, what is the difference between the terrorism practiced by Hamas and what the Zionist paramilitaries practiced in the early days of the State of Israel? And to me, I feel there should be something coming together. I will embrace what you said, that when it comes to military, we'd far rather be saving lives than taking lives.
Well, I think that there is one big difference. Israel, or the Lehi movement, that claim that the British officers are their enemies, never said that our mission is to kill and eliminate every British or every Palestinian living on that land. I remind you that the Lehi, which some would claim that they were terrorists, some would claim that they were heroes, they were the minority. And where is the difference? Hamas claims that Israel do not have the right to exist, means that in their vision, we all of us, the Israelis, should be eliminated. This is the true meaning of from the river to the sea, throw us to the sea, because this is should be their land. And Hamas is the majority of the Palestinian population. The reason why there isn't any election in the last 30 years in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, is because President Abbas knows that if will be election, Hamas will win. It means that when the majority of the people claims that the goal is to destroy you, I think that here you can see a huge difference. Extremists,
Sorry, can we be? Yes, carry on, Eyal, carry on.
Extremists, you will find everywhere. On Judaism, we can see even today extremists. You can see extremists in the UK. However, when we're talking about the majority, this is what concerns me. Hamas is not a little radical movement. Hamas is a major and a very big part of the Palestinian society. And I think that this should be a red alert. Because if the majority claims that you don't have a right to exist, here you find the difference. Here you will find an enemy. It is not a radical small group that you can put or blame that, okay, they are extremists, however, they are 5% of the population. Hamas is more than 60% of the population. Hamas ideas, Hamas ideology.
Thank you, Eyal. Michael Giles.
Thanks very much, Gary, and thanks very much, Eyal, for your speech tonight. My question, please, is this, and I realize it may be a difficult one to answer, but what I'd appreciate your thoughts on, please, is the following. In the UK, since October the 7th, we've had these dreadful hate marches, for example, every Saturday in London. And one of the challenges that this country faces is the growing Muslim population and the radicalization of that Muslim population, particularly the younger elements of that. Could I ask, please, have you ever had the chance to think at a high level as to what steps you would recommend in light of what you've done in your career? What steps could be taken, whether by the Jewish community or by those of us not in the Jewish community, and perhaps at a governmental level, to help address this problem? The final thing I'd say to you is I've got a very good friend in Birmingham, and this person said that it's probably well known, but there are certain no-go areas where the police just won't go into the elements of the city. They're Muslim areas, it's just too dangerous. Now, bearing in mind the heroic work that you've done in Syria, I just wondered if you had the chance to think in the European perspective, in the UK perspective, what could be done, because I find it really, really worrying. Thanks.
So I will tell you, Michael, I do believe, and it might sound ridiculous, but I think that the problem with the rising Islam in Europe, seriously, is not a Jewish problem.
No.
It will be a problem for every citizen of the UK, of
Yes.
Netherlands, of Sweden, of Germany, of Austria.
Yes.
It will not be a Jewish problem.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And I think that unless the government will realize that the majority, again, I do not love to speak about 100%.
Yeah.
However, you have heard a couple of interviews of Muslims living, whether in the UK or in France or in other places. You heard them that we don't want to be a part of France. We're going to conquer France.
Yes.
We don't want to be a part of Belgium. We will conquer Belgium. You are the Christian. You will be our slaves like it was 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Until the government, until the media will not realize that, first of all, they will be able to continue. When they will realize that, they can stop sponsoring them. They can stop, for example, and in some countries in Europe, you cannot immigrate anymore from Muslim countries because they started to realize that. If you will hear Geert Wilders from Netherlands is talking about that.
Yeah.
For example, you must go to the education system, and if you want that they will be a part of UK, a part of Netherlands, a part of what, start to educate them, not on the roof of the Islam, on the values of the UK, on the democracy of the UK.
Yeah.
They are taking advantage. I'm always claiming that, I'm claiming about the Palestinians, but it's go to Muslims. They're living in dictatorships. They came to democracies. They're taking the advantage of the democracy. However, when you criticize them, they are always like insulting, and they are saying you cannot criticize us.
Yeah.
Why not? This is the meaning of democracy. We can criticize. So I'm always saying that I'm praying that Europe will wake up.
Yes.
I hope it will not be too late. And like you said yourself, there is places in the UK, in Sweden, in Germany, that the local police, not Eyal as a tourist came from Israel with, I don't know, with my Hebrew tattoo on my hand.
Yeah.
The local police cannot enter.
Yeah.
And I ask, what should the world experience more until they will realize that this is a threat? It was a strategic mistake. It goes back to ignorance of the European. It goes back to not understanding the Islamic culture. Tons of mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you will not wake up, I just read that in the UK, it was published that the Muslims are still the minority. However, they like, I don't know how much percent from the population of UK, but they are the government of Birmingham, the government of a couple of major cities are Muslims.
Yeah.
And what will happen if they will start to make Sharia laws, because this is their mindset?
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's
I think that Europe is in a problem.
Yeah, so do I. Thanks, Eyal.
Thank you very much. Next question is Felix Aarons. Felix, if possible, can you turn your camera on?
I'll try. Let's see if my technology supports that. Wait the hell. Sorry. Is it working?
Almost. It's not facing you.
Yeah.
But carry on talking while you're trying.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not so good with it. Anyway, I had two questions. If I may. First was, could you imagine that something like the operation that you carried out in Syria could at some point also be done in respect of Iranian children or people who are in need and could benefit from such treatment? Of course, the distance is much larger, but I think it could definitely help the optics of the situation. Second question would be, indeed, in parallel to the question of just earlier, could something similar but on a civilian scale be done in Europe by, for instance, by Jewish communities in respect of their Muslim or Arab neighbors, just to foster some kind of goodwill? Or is that running into the risk of what we saw in the communities in the kibbutzim around Gaza, where basically people were taken advantage of and their security situation compromised by actually having looked after their Arab neighbors from across the fence? Apologies for asking two questions.
So I will try to answer, and I will start from the first one. Operation Good Neighbor could have been made in other places. It always a matter of a will from the locals. For example, in Lebanon, after they have their horrific bombed on the port of Lebanon in August 2020, Israel offered aid to Lebanon. However, they rejected because Hezbollah was strong. Regarding Iran, again, Iran is far away. You don't have like a border between Israel and Iran. So making like Operation Good Neighbor specifically in this stage is not available. However, if, for example, the regime will be changed, it can be like Israel will support in the humanitarian way. I will say that in general, Israel is doing a lot for the safety of the world in Africa, in Europe, in Turkey when they had their earthquake. So Israel is doing a lot. You can call it Operation Good Neighbor, you can call it in other words, but Israel is trying to help, and Israel is always will be the first to offer aid. Again, like I said, from political reasons, sometimes will not work. So I do believe and do hope that if the Iranian regime will be changed, this one is lost. This one is full with hate to Israel, he will not allow to get any aid from Israel. However, if it will be a change, there is possibilities. And regarding the communities between people living now, I don't know if the UK with their Arab communities, first of all, I do believe in dialogue. What I do not believe is to become a naive. You have to know the other side, you have to respect it. However, to be suspicious with the other side, this is what guide me. So you can't blink and you cannot close your eyes. Those people indoctrinated, most of them, again, most of them. There is Muslims that support Israel. There are Muslims that if you will sit with them on a glass of coffee, they will tell you and they will talk with you honestly that they are not accept. However, unfortunately, during the system, and you saw the demonstration in the UK, in London, for the support of the Palestinians. So people have been brainwashed, and it can be very challenging to convince them otherwise. However, if you have a Muslim neighbor, I will offer him to have a cup of coffee with me, trying to speak with him, trying to expose him the meaning of being Israeli. By the way, I will say that probably people, and this is something that I see when I'm visiting campuses in the UK or in the US, Jewish students, they do not have knowledge about Israel. People do not know about, for example, Operation Good Neighbor. This is a good start to have any conversation with the Sunni. You know that my country saved your own people. However, people do not know do not have this knowledge. So if a person, a Muslim guy, who is not hostile for Israel, but he is just hearing some bad news about Israel, and he will ask you a question, you will not probably, I'm not talking about you, maybe your son, maybe your grandson, will not know how to respond because people do not know the facts. People are not exploring. People do not know the stories. I blame Israel for not providing the Jews outside Israel the information to be able to face against or just to share with their neighbors. So I will offer him to drink a coffee. However, like I said before, I will not fall asleep because unfortunately, and this is what history learned us, a lot of them are brainwashed. They do not love us because this is what they heard in home or in their mosques. Sad but true. This is the reality.
Thank you, and well done, Felix, on getting your camera to work. Leonid Yanovich. Leonid.
Thank you, Eyal, and thank you for your work. My question is, I read stories about Gazans being treated in Israeli hospitals happily, and then discussing between themselves how their cousin will come and bomb this hospital, obviously because of the brainwashing and propaganda in Gaza. What's your feel about the conditioning of the Syrians near the Israeli border in this respect?
So we knew that some of them, and history proved that some of them, we treated in Israel 6,000 Syrians, and we provided help for approximately 250,000 of them during the days of the war. The minority of them, some of them, were collaborating in the years of 2018, 2024 with the Iranian regime. They didn't have money, they need the money, so they collaborate, although their life has been saved a couple of years ago by Israel. This is a chance, this is a risk that we chose to take. We knew that someday the friend can be an enemy. This is what I claimed before. I will not close my eyes. I will raise my hand and start and try to help to anyone. However, I will be very brutally and aggressively against people who are aiming to hit my civilians. However, if you are talking about Syria, most of them, although between 2018 to 2024, Hezbollah did a huge effort to recruit them, and they had a very big lake of money, most of them refused to collaborate with those regimes. Some of the reasons were because they remember that Israel saved their lives. Now, regarding Gaza, I do believe that it's a different issue. Gaza was controlled by a very radical, much more radical religious regime than Assad. Assad was a dictator. However, he wasn't a radical religious person. And when, like we said before, when you are entering the issue of the religious so radically, it's a problem. I think that Israel did a lot of mistakes regarding Gaza in the last years. I think that the perspective that if they will be treated in Israel and without monitoring them, without knowing who are the leaders and what are the ideas, I think it was it was a mistake. I will tell you more than it. The difference is Gaza is a political issue. Why the state of Israel couldn't have convinced the world that if there is a problem with any person from Gaza and he is sick, he can go to the other international border, to Rafah, and to be treated in Egypt. So again, unfortunately, regarding Gaza, it's so much politics involved, and Israel didn't make those actions to convince the international community that, for example, they shouldn't be treated. So most of them could have crossed to Israel and be treated. It doesn't matter what were their ideas, unless he was like had a black spot from the security forces. It means that I can hate you. I will not speak with that. I can enter Israel anytime I want. So again, there is a difference. I will say that you can try always, however, you cannot close your eyes.
Eyal, have you got, say, another 15 minutes or so? Is that okay?
Yeah, for me it's okay.
Great, lovely. Robert Collins, if possible, can you turn your camera on?
I'm sorry, my camera's not working today.
Okay, never mind, we'll listen to it.
Yes, a few minutes ago, you mentioned that the majority of Palestinians were Hamas supporters. If that is so, how can Israel ever hope to destroy Hamas in the way that perhaps it destroyed Hezbollah?
So Israel is talking about destroying the military force, first of all, of Hamas, which I think we succeeded to do. And then there is a huge difference. When I'm talking about the majority, I'm talking about Judea and Samaria and Gaza. There is a huge difference. In Judea and Samaria, most of the people is supporting Hamas. Why? Because they have a lot of hate for the Palestinian Authority. By the way, if you are looking for the history, in 2007, when Hamas made his revolution at Gaza, most of the population was support him because they felt sick from the corruption of the Palestinian Authority. They did a military revolution. However, most of the public were like happy. I was in Gaza, I was serving at that days in Gaza. I had plenty of talks with the people of Gaza, and they said, okay, we had enough of this regime. The people of Judea and Samaria, it's almost another 20 years, hating the Palestinian Authority. This is why some of them are supporting Hamas, not just because the pure hate of Israel. Of course, you're supporting Hamas. It means that in the mosque, you are being educated to hate us. However, if you will go back to Gaza, the people there is supporting Hamas because Hamas sponsoring them. Hamas in the last 17 years built a system that if you are with me, you will get money. Means that you're supporting me because of the money. If Israel will be able, and the biggest mistake of Israel, in my opinion, in the war with Gaza is that we didn't create the alternative. Pay attention what is happening in the last 2.5 weeks when Israel made an alternative just for the humanitarian aid. Hamas is shooting this organization that provide food because Hamas realized that if he will not control the humanitarian aid, people will not agree with them. So there is a major difference between the Palestinian Judea and Samaria and the Palestinian Gaza. The Palestinian Gaza are so frustrating for Hamas. They know that Hamas made the destruction of Gaza. However, they do not have any alternative. So they will support him. If Israel would have, from the first days, and again, it goes unfortunately to interpolitics in Israel. I'm not speaking about not fighting Hamas. I'm not speaking about the humanitarian aid. We had to stop it way, way before and to find an alternative for that. However, we missed the third channel, sorry, and it's to create an alternative for the regime of the Hamas. If it will be, today there is talking about this Abu Shabab guy that it might be alternative. Again, he's also a terrorist. I do believe that it could have been much more easier in the past if Israel could have made some plan with the UAE, with Egypt, with like moderate Islamic countries. However, again, we skipped this. I will claim because of political reasons. So this is why I think that there is a possibility to defeat Hamas in Gaza. It is a problem. It's a major problem to dismantle the ideas of Hamas. The ideas of Hamas based on the ideas of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's something that will continue to be. We see it with ISIS. We see that it was Al-Qaeda. Again, you have a problem to face again the religious belief. However, the model that happened in Syria, I remind you that in Syria in 2014, 2015, it was a country controlled by ISIS. They called him the Khalifa. It was in Raqqa in the northern part of Syria. And this the American coalition succeeded to defeat the country, not the ideas. This is exactly what can be made on Gaza, to defeat the military power, the government power of Hamas, to bring some other alternative to control Gaza. The ideas, unfortunately, will be stay on the hearts of the people unless they will be educated for other issues. This is something that I even cannot see from the Palestinian Authority of these days. So I'm not optimistic about that issue. I do believe that we can finish the work with Hamas.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the next question, actually. I am relatively optimistic about one particular aspect, that if there is success in achieving regime change, I believe that anti-Semitism around the world is going to significantly decrease. Now, you may think I'm mad, but let me explain why, and I want your opinion. First reason is Iran. The Iranian regime won't be there to help massive amounts of finance going to Jew haters. Obviously, you've still got Qatar, but a big chunk of the Jew-hating finance will disappear. The second reason is more subtle. The main cause of the anti-Semitic movement in terms of events are the marches, the hate marches we're seeing in the UK, in London especially, everywhere. Now, history tells us that what happens with these hate marches, of whatever nature they may be, they're either successful in bringing about change or they fail. The Vietnam War, they were successful. The Americans pulled out. In Britain, we had in the early 1980s a campaign for nuclear disarmament to get us to get rid of our nuclear weapons. It failed because, firstly, Margaret Thatcher was re-elected, and secondly, 90% of the British people said they wanted to keep nuclear weapons. And what happened is the organisers of all these marches, they've got 1.5 million people, went on to march about something else. And I think that the Jew haters behind the hate marches in Britain, their objective is to destroy Israel. If Iran's regime is eliminated, they will have a much harder task of it, and I think they'll be moving on to something else. What's your opinion?
So, for the first part of your words, 100%, the ability or the understanding that Hamas, that Iran will not be a stronger country or important country anymore, and will not have the money to spend billions of dollars to spend about educated to hate. It's going to, for sure, less people will be exposed to their videos and to their clips and to their hates. And there again, there is a lot of Shiites also in London that hating the Jews because Khamenei said that. Regarding the marches, I think that at the end of the day, people will realize, and I said it in an interview a couple of days ago, I think that the Western world, the Western media, will realize that Israel saved the world. Maybe if we will get some more, and again, you have to be optimistic, but I will not expect that the BBC will be grateful for Israel. However, if other channels will speak about that, maybe it will be able to decrease the hate. And I think that people, when they will see and understand that Israel is here, Israel is here to exist. Israel is leading the world in technology. Israel is leading the world in innovation. I hope that in the next future, the hate for Jews will be a little bit less, will be decreased. Of course, if I will take it from my point of view as a Middle Eastern, if we will be able to move a step, I'm not talking about the Palestinians, to have a step with Lebanon or with Syria or with Saudi Arabia, it will be a major force to fight against anti-Semitism, because you will hear more Muslims speaking about Israel and having connection with Israel. So it will be influence in the long range a lot of other Muslims.
Thank you. The last question will be from Justin Walker, and then I'm going to ask our Chief Executive, Steve Winston, to propose a vote of thanks. Justin.
Thank you very much. Well, I suppose as an amateur historian, I have to say that the area around the Holy Land, the Middle East, all around there, has been full of bloodshed for what, 2,000-3,000 years? You know, I would like to think I'm an eternal optimist. And I was lucky enough to go to Assisi in 1979, where all the faiths, all the religious faiths were there for the environment, for animals, and for humanity. And it was the most moving experience I've ever had. And I work with other historians in this country, and we've all looked at things. And, you know, in a way, we need to take the politics out of religion. Religion should be a spiritual thing, something that brings people together, human values. And so, Colonel, I take my hat off. You're obviously a humanitarian. You want to help people when we need to help them. I would just like to leave this one message. Can we not find a way of taking the politics out of religion, leave those who want to make power bases out of things, leave them to one side, and come together with our human values to do what is right? And let's hope somehow we can find a way through. Maybe somebody said to me the other day, what about a new country? Give everyone their equal rights, a sort of Judeo-Palestine Holy Land, whatever you want to call it. I'm not, but just get people talking together. As you said, bring your neighbor in, have a coffee. I just feel my heart. I can't stand the bloodshed. I've seen bloodshed, so I know what I'm talking about. Can't we come together?
So as a military, Mr. Justin, and you and I expose war, there is nothing, there isn't any person that want peace more than a warrior.
Yeah. Yeah.
We knows the meaning of a war. However, when the other side, and I'm always looking about my side, about Israel, about our leaders, and I criticize sometimes my leaders. However, when the other side is educated for years, and it's connected to the first question you asked me, we never educated our children to hate the Lebanese. I was talking with my son. Again, we're a mile from the border. Our community has been hit by Hezbollah. And when my son asked me, do you hate the Lebanese? No, I don't hate them. I don't hate them. I don't hate the people of Hezbollah. They are my enemies. Yes, I will do everything it's needed in order to defend my country. However, when the other side is educated, his children, that I'm the devil, take a look at the Houthis flag, death to America, death to Israel. We are not educating our children to death, to kill the other side. And this is the major difference between us and them. And unfortunately, Justin, because I know how they're educated, I think that what you said is a wishful thinking. However, it's a naive wishful thinking, because unless it will be, and maybe this is the part of the Western, the enlightened world that do not want war, to force those people to change the regimes. They will be dictatorship. I met a colleague in LA, a Syrian colleague in LA 3 months ago. So I was laughing and I said, okay, now you have a Sunnis government. What is going to be with the democracy? And we both were laughing. And he told me, democracy will not happen in Syria. We only want that our leader will be honest and will not butcher us. The tradition of those countries are not democracy. However, I think that the enlightened world, which by the way is paying them money and invest a lot of money in their countries, will insist at least to change their education system. When it will be changed, when they will stop educating the children to hate me, and by the way, to hate you, because like I explained, the Iranian regime calls you and calls the Americans the big devil. There isn't any difference between me and Mr. Smith living in the state or Mr. John living in the UK. In their perspective, we're all the same. When this will be changed, something might be changed in the relationship between those countries, those people, to us. Before I will finish, Mr. Gary, I saw hearing that it was like a question about the book, when you can buy it. With your permission, I will share the link later on with Dalia, or I don't know,
with Dalia, yeah.
you will advise me how to do that.
Okay.
And I just want to say thank you very much. It was so lovely.
Thank you very much. In a moment, I'm going to call on Steve Winston, our managing director, to propose a vote of thanks. I've just got two brief things to say. One is we're organising a trip to Israel in September. I believe it's in the second week of September. The full details can be got from Dalia. It's a 4-day trip, and on the trip you will meet Eyal as well. So that will be particularly interesting. Secondly, we're just in the beginnings of organising a big Hanukkah party over Hanukkah. I think it's the 15th of December. And everyone who's a member will, of course, be notified about this and given the opportunity to buy tickets. Thank you. Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you, Gary. Sorry, that was my phone going on for some reason. Eyal, thank you very much on behalf of all of us at the NJA. It seems like yesterday that I stood with you and another delegation alongside Mount Bental, and you explained all about your amazing work that you did with Operation Good Neighbour. It's like, you know, and I think what's been since, we've had COVID, we've had the 2021 war in Gaza, and obviously the horror of October the 7th, and now the 8th front, I think, with Iran. So it's been a trying few years, but you know, your work is a clear testament to what can be done if the will is there. And I think we should all be mindful of that. So thank you for sharing your experiences and your insight, and also your updates at the, you know, your sort of update of what's going on currently with Iran and elsewhere in the region. So thank you very much. To everyone, Gary just mentioned our trip that is coming up, please God, from the 7th to the 11th, or 7th to the 10th or 11th of September. I would urge, if you are interested to go to Israel at that time, then please do consider contacting Dalia to find out more about the trip. It will be a very busy 4 days, and you won't regret it. So please do consider going on the trip. And as Gary said, you will be meeting with Eyal during that time at and around Mount Bental, which I mentioned just now. So anyway, to round up, Eyal, thank you very much on behalf of us all, our audience, the NJA. stay safe, be safe with your family, and yeah, please God, we'll see you soon.
To the book.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
So,
Okay, good
Thank
night,
you very
everyone.
much.
thank you
Take
very
care,
much.
everyone.
I'm looking forward to see you in Israel. And I put the link to the book on the comment. So thank
Yeah,
you very much.
Yeah, sorry, Eyal. I also posted a link to the book a couple of times during the evening. And we will also be including it when we send out the recording of this event tomorrow. So everyone will get the link then as well.
Good.
Have a great
Okay.
night. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Bye.